Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program Discuss here on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. Many thanks for joining on to this edition of the program. Today, we'll be looking at foreign investments, addressing policy strategy for capital inflow, because foreign investment, those resources that we gather from foreign investment, is what is being used for job creation, infrastructural development, and so much more. So we will be addressing the concerns around why Nigeria has been declining in terms of attracting foreign investors to come invest in Nigerian society and Nigerian economy at large. But we'll be extracting a lot of conversations today, the causes, and then we'll be looking at the reason why all of this has been happening. Let me bring you up to speed. Foreign direct investments, the capital that builds factories, power ports, and fund our fast growing companies, is trickling into Nigeria, not pouring in. On today's edition of Discuss, why investors, we're going to be finding out why investors are watching more than they are committing, what the numbers are telling us, and what the government must do to turn interest into investment. So in 2024, the foreign direct investment we saw was around $1.08 billion, and then in 2025, the first quarter of the same period, 2025, we saw a decline of $250 million. Then investors cite policies uncertainty. Data package showed that from the foreign investment trend from 2018 to 2024 show a decline of first quarter of the 2025, and also we saw on today that a whole lot of decline has been happening. On today's edition, we will be discussing and be asking big questions: why foreign direct investment, the capital that creates jobs and build industry, slow to come into Nigeria, even as some economic indicators improve. After a versatile decade, foreign direct investment flows to Nigeria has been modest. And these are all of the reports we're getting from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Nigeria's foreign direct investment inflow dropped to about $1.08 billion in 2024. That figure represents a sharp drop from earlier years, and it's part of a larger global slowdown in foreign direct investment. Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Nigeria balance of payments data shows that foreign direct investment fell to about $250 million in the first quarter of 2025, a decline of roughly 19% from the previous quarter, underscoring how fragile investor confidence remains. And then this is also a very big concern. Yet, set as we unpack these numbers, examine the costs, and ask what Nigeria must fix to capitals. So capital stops watching and also starts building. In the short run, let's just backtrack a little bit for context and be able to have a clearer foundation on what we are looking to discuss today. From the year 2018 all through to 2021, higher project inflows and large transactions happened. We saw all of that within this period in Nigerian foreign direct investment, which attributed to a certain percentage of growth we saw in the Nigerian GDP. But still, that did not stop the inflation rate from going up. We are going to extract that part as well. In 2022, we saw a rebound and inflow influenced by selected large projects. This means that some sectors were paid specific attention to, and then we saw significant growth and investments coming into that sector. This happened in the year 2022. And then in 2023, reported figure was for foreign direct investment was around $1.87 billion, a notable increase from that of 2022. So you're seeing the trajectory of the upline and uptrend that we are witnessing within this sector. But now, moving on, in 2024, just immediately when this regime came in, we saw the foreign direct investment falling. It fell to minus $1.08 billion, a material decline relative to the prior year. And then in the first quarter of 2025, we are also witnessing a decline of $250 million dollars. And then the Central Bank of Nigeria says in the Q1, that's first quarter of BOP, notes that quarter level totals are reported by the central bank. Monthly breakdowns are less consistently published, which is also a question that needs to be answered. All the indicators affecting the foreign direct investment still includes balance of payments, turnaround surplus in 2024, and stronger reserves supported investor sentiment. But the foreign direct investment remained subdued. Portfolio flows surged in 2024, but these are different from long-term foreign direct investment. So we'll be having all of this conversation. We'll be extracting all of these major talking points. But before we get into the conversation deeply, I will be going on a quick break, and then shortly my guest will be joining virtually to help us unpack this parallel conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Discourse here on Global Television, and I am Samuel Odi. Today we'll be looking at foreign direct investments. We'll be addressing the policies and the concerns of why Nigeria hasn't been attracting lots of foreign direct investment as it did in the previous years and previous administration. So we are going to be extracting all of this conversation today. Joining me to unpack this conversation is Bello Mohammed. Bello Mohammed is a renowned economist who understands the system more. Bello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Discuss today.
Thank you for having me, Samuel.
Yes. So, Bello, looking at Nigerian system, economic system now so far, and looking at the foreign direct investment, give us your overview, general, of what you feel that it's being done, and how well do you think Nigeria has been able to regroup. And looking at our foreign direct investments, the rise that we saw in 2022, we saw another one in 2023. We suffered a very deep decline in 2024. And then in the first quarter of 2025, we are witnessing another decline of around $250 million. Just walk us through what you think are the major concerns here that the CBN needs to, pay attention to.
Okay. Yeah, so Samuel, when we think of foreign direct investment, we have to really see it this way. For instance, think of investments like building kind of factories or setting up long-term businesses, right? This is not money you can just pull out overnight.
Yes.
So before investors commit, they ask one question such that maybe things like, okay, can I predict the environment in the next 5 or 10 years from now? So, and if you look at the trend of foreign direct investment over the years, it tells a kind of interesting story that foreign direct investors are really watching Nigeria, but they are not really coming into Nigeria. And people ask me most of questions around this why foreign investors are not coming in large numbers. I usually start by saying this. The investors are not really ignoring Nigeria. Okay. What they are doing is that they are watching very closely, because we have a very deep issue, which is that of trust, not awareness. Not the foreign investors are not aware of the business opportunities that are in Nigeria or the investment opportunities that are in Nigeria, because Nigeria currently still remains one of the Africa's largest markets by population and even one of its biggest economy. So that alone keeps global investors interested. Okay. So, but look at the narrative, let's look at the numbers. Just let's take 2025 for instance. What we are currently seeing is a kind of wait and see approach that I feel is hurting our long-term growth. So, for instance, in the first quarter of this year, Nigeria attracted over 4.2 billion in capital importation, right? So, which sounds great in paper. It has been covered by a lot of newspaper, radio station, and a lot of reports that we have attracted 5.2 billion in capital importation. But then there is a catch in this. If you look at all of this capital importation, almost all of the money is sort of hot money, or I would say kind of portfolio investment. Which tells a kind of story that okay, the investors are interested, but then what are they interested in? They are interested in buying short-term government bonds that will earn them high interest. So if you look at actual foreign direct investment, that's the kind that build factories, the kind that hire youth, the kind that establish businesses. It was only around $126 million.
Yes.
So break this further, that's to say, for instance, for every $50 that came in Nigeria to gamble on the high interest rate, only $1 was actually committed to building a business. So if you look at this, you can see that there is a very, very staggering gap. And it tells us that the investors, what they are interested is in trading our bonds.
Yes.
But they are not really willing to trust our soil. As Nigeria have a great potential, but these investors are holding back because the risks of investing currently in the economy outweigh the expected returns.
Okay, looking at it now, external reserve and BOP improved in 2024, but the foreign direct investment didn't keep the same pace. What do you think were the obstacles that are, stopping this long-term investors from committing into capital? Because you said, we saw a bit of improvement in the capital aspect earlier this year, but the pace now for the foreign direct investment is not being followed suit still.
Yeah, so if you look at the issue of foreign direct investment, one thing that we have to bear in mind is that of policy credibility. So one of our biggest issues as a country is that of policy credibility, and this, investors, we have what we call investor confidence for you to attract foreign direct investment, and this is something that is built on consistency. So if you check the whole foreign direct investment, it is something that is always forward-looking. Investors, when they are to invest in a country, what they look at is not just today's policy.
Okay.
What they look at is yesterday's policy and tomorrow's policy, and they now conclude as to whether the policy environment is going to be stable over short period of time and over long period of time, say 5 to 10 years. So here is, if rules change too often, even good policy will stop working. And in Nigeria specifically, we have seen repeated shift in these policies, ranging from rules, trade policies, and regulations. So what investors know is that they can manage risks, but they cannot manage uncertainty. And in this case, what I mean here is that investors can manage the risks that is associated with saying, for instance, okay, I'm going to invest in Nigeria. Will people buy my product in Nigeria? This is something as an investor that you can manage. But then you cannot manage my product after I've established my business in the country.
Yes.
So trying to disentangle these two things is what investors are always looking forward to. And Nigeria, as I said, has these policy flip-flops. Today we announce a reform, and then tomorrow, before you know it, there will be a lot of black ash, people reacting to the policy,
yes.
And then all of the sudden the policy will be reversed, or it will be poorly implemented. So this kind of attitude toward policies tends to break the trust contract between investors and countries they are willing to invest. So another issue that stop these investors most of the time from coming in is around regulatory overlap and enforcement risks. Sometimes we have these repeated enforcement rules. A lot of business often have to deal with multiple regulators across federal, state, and local levels. So there is a lot of bureaucracy involved, and sometimes these rules tend to overlap or even conflict with each other.
Okay.
So this also kind of creates uncertainty and even raise the cost of business. So when investors are always faced with uncertainty and increasing cost, so they tend to look at some other places where they are going to get, a moderate level of uncertainty and where the cost of running this business is moderate.
Okay, policy has been a problem, but the thing with Nigerian policies is that these policies are always very good on paper, but a lot have argued that implementation has always been a problem of Nigeria, and that's one of the major reasons why investors are having cold feet to come into the country and invest properly. But from your standpoint as an economist, which policy actions should be prioritized now so as to bring in investment into the country? Which do you think we have a lot of policies, right? So which do you think should be prioritized so as it will attract foreign direct investments?
Yes, most of our policies, as you said, they are really good in papers, but then what we have is an implementation issue. So we do a lot of signaling and talks, trying to woo investors, but what we really need to do is to actually structure our economy such that we don't be doing all those signaling and talks, we trying to woo investors, with all sort of talk. So for instance, we have to look in macroeconomic stability.
Okay.
Right? So this is one of key factors that all investors consider. So they have to look at the macroeconomic factors and macroeconomic indicators to see whether they have been stable over time. So for instance, you look at exchange rates, foreign exchange reforms and the move toward, a more kind of market reflective exchange regime.
Yes.
So we have seen increase in FX inflows, right? But then the key is consistency. Investors need to believe that this reform will not be reversed.
Yeah.
So we may wake up tomorrow and say, oh, maybe somebody will just come on board and say, oh, yeah, so we've pursued these policies, but then maybe we should try something. This is not something that investors want to see. Since we have started pursuing this policy, we need to really ensure that we are pursuing it with full force until all the objectives of this policy have been achieved. Secondly, permit to what I would say policy predictability. Right. So as I mentioned, investors can predict, can price bad policy, but they cannot price, uncertainty. So when there is uncertainty, investor will not want to invest in those kind of economy. So, for instance, investor will want to know the tax that they will pay, the regulator that in charge, and how it to kind of to amend dispute whenever they arise. So when these rules are not as clear and predictable as possible, it becomes incredibly difficult to invest. And the third factor I think we really need to work on is the increasing cost of business. Cost of business is increasingly high in Nigeria.
Okay.
So, and for investors to really come and invest in our economy, this cost of doing business has to fall. And most of the factors contributing to this cost of doing business ranges from power shortages, logistics, and other factors like poor transport infrastructure.
Yes.
Which reduce significantly returns on the investment. So you'll be investing, but then you don't have power to run most of this investment. So you'll be relying on diesel, on petrol to fuel your machine and other things, right? So and that would increase your cost of doing business because even the subsidy has been removed.
Yes.
So without addressing most of these issues, we will continue to struggle to attract foreign direct investment that will really boost our economy, that will really provide opportunities for our youth to be hired, that will kind of just expand the economy. So we have to really work on these issues. And then the other factor is institutions. Our institutions are, becoming weaker day by day. So, and investors want to kind of have assurance that contracts will be respected and disputes are, kind of resolved fairly and quickly. I've seen a news report recently where some contractors were parading in the Ministry of Finance because of unpaid contracts. See, those kind of attitude toward contracts are not are something that really discourage investment, because you borrow money, invest in an economy, you've been given contract, you execute the contract, but then paying you back your money becomes an issue. So this automatically kind of increases the risks of investing in the country, such that investors will now resort to demanding a higher premium. So we have to work on our institutions. We have to address this increasing cost of doing business. We have to also commit to policy predictability, and we have to look in macroeconomic stability. Our macroeconomy has to be stable, and our policy has to be predictable and clear as possible for investors to be really interested in investing in our economy.
Based on everything you've said, subsidy removal and all, we have seen that in terms of trying to, create a new energy, the government is creating compressed natural gas, which a couple of individuals are using now, and also the use of solar system to be able to run businesses. But that being said, and despite all of the concerns that you have highlighted, Bello, how do you think the government can work with private sectors to fast track the bankable projects such as gas to fertilizer and power ports? Because these are what other developed and also developing nations are channeling their attention to. How do you think this now can be able to, attract, or what policy do you think the government can create around these sectors that can attract, foreign direct investments?
Yeah, so as you do rightly mention, these are what we call kind of credible and targeted sectors. Renewable energy are some of the kind of these kind of sectors provide a kind of realistic entry point, because it is something trending, it is something that is equally important to the economy, and it is something that attracts billions of dollars in investment. So, but then we approach this project or sectors. So we are trying to attract foreign investors. So we have to play as possible what we have, the policy, the business environment, and what we are going to offer these investors. So we have to offer things, we have to offer them a business environment that will be clear to them that, okay, if you are investing in this project or you are investing in these sectors, you are definitely getting your returns. And how would investors be very much sure about the fact that their investment is secure and they are going to get something out of the investment?
Yes.
It will still take us to our earlier point. The macroeconomy has to be stable, cost of business has to be low, and we have to have less bureaucracy in the way we operate. And also, we have to commit to this policy predictability. So you cannot issue, you cannot be trying to attract foreign investor and then you don't have a predictable policy. You say something today and then tomorrow you react differently. So, for instance, take the case of the recent case of Dangote and the CEO of the one of the regulatory agency, the only regulator, that's Farouk Ahmed. So if you see that kind of shift between investor and regulatory agency, doesn't send good signal to foreign investors.
Okay.
Right. You can see how much conference, how much back and forth Dangote as an investor has to go through.
Yes.
And this is ensuring that his business is secured, his investment is secured, because he has invested a lot into the business. So, and Dangote that is in Nigeria, right, is going through this. What do you think a foreign investor would think? So the thought of foreign investor will be like, the citizen of the country is also suffering in the hands of this regulator. Things are not easy for. There are a lot of reports of sabotage, a lot of report, of bureaucracy trying to, shortchange the investment and all. So these things has to be, the narrative has to be changed completely if we really want attract foreign investment in these sectors, because these sectors, as I said, are viable sectors and they offer realistic entry point.
Yes.
But then it has to be clear to the investor that it is worthwhile investing, because you will not be that kind of investor who want to invest a lot of money into something, and then before you know it, your investment will turn into nothing.
Yes, you mentioning Dangote and Farouk. I think we are going to come to that conversation quickly. But you mentioned a couple of things surrounding on uncertainty. Do you think that insecurity also is playing a negative role in having foreign investors coming to the Nigerian economic ecosystem? Do you think that's one of the major factors?
That's another factor that I wanted to touch briefly. Insecurity is another factor that we really need to address. Outside macroeconomic instability and policy unpredictability, insecurity is another factor, because another sector in Nigeria that is really green and is worth attracting foreign investment is the agri sector.
Yes.
We have a growing, population that the demand for agriculture is almost available almost every day, every night. So we need investors in these areas. But then, how secure are these areas that investor will want to invest? Like, for instance, the likes of Sokoto, the likes of Zamfara, the likes of KB, where agriculture is being done massively. So you may want to go there and invest hugely in those projects. Maybe you set up, rice plants. You set up, a lot of plants, that will do either processing of this agricultural product, or even farming of this agricultural product.
Yes.
But then you have to be sure that the place is secure and free from what we are seeing today, issues of banditry, kidnapping. You don't want to invest hugely in a project and then all of the sudden the place is not accessible. We have seen a lot, but we have farmers that have been pursued out of their farms, by bandits and kidnappers. So you would want, as an investor, you wouldn't want a situation whereby you invest in a place, you accessing your investment now becomes a problem.
Yes.
You want a situation whereby you can access your investment, you can access your plant every day and at every time.
Yes.
So without addressing these issues of insecurity, kidnapping that is, ravaging all these places, Sokoto and other places, but we cannot really attract these foreign investors. And this is discouraging them, because the fear of not even foreign investor. Now a lot of Nigerians don't want to go down to some of these areas because of the fear of being kidnapped, or the fear of being ambushed by bandits, or the fear of being attacked.
Yes.
Right? So this is one. And think of how these news, are being carried on international, platforms, CNN, the likes of Al Jazeera. So there is need for us to really address and manage these insecurity issues such that everywhere will be secured, and every investor will feel like, oh, there is this comfortability of him traveling across the country. There is no this fear of being kidnapped, no fear of being attacked or whatsoever. So this is equally an important issue that we really need to address.
You mentioned regulation, and there's a lot happening within the regulatory framework of different economic sectors. What role do you think they are playing in, keeping Nigerian economy at the level which it is? What do you think the presidency needs to do now in terms of addressing this? Because the rift now that happened between Dangote and Farouk, it's something that, open the eyes of a whole lot of Nigerians and also investors locally, like you mentioned, and also foreign investors will be having cold feet to come. So how can the narrative change now? What can be done to be able to woo investors locally first? Because your house can't be on fire and then you're going to be chasing the rats in the bush. So what can be done locally first to address these concerns before we start seeking or wooing investors from other the developed countries?
So what I think is that the presidency is really, trying in this regard, because if you look at the response of the presidency between the start of the rift between Dangote and Farouk, and the reaction of the presidency and other institutions like the ICPC, I think that have sent a strong signal to the investors, and that's both local investors and foreign investors, that yes, we are ready for business.
Yes.
If there is any issue, we are really going to address it. Most of the issues surrounding the rift between Dangote and Farouk, the most damning one is that of the allegations of corruptions that Dangote alleges. And you can see within just few days, the presidency reacted. There are reports that the president has called on Farouk, to hear from his own side of the story, and the outcome was that Farouk resigned.
Yes.
So we cannot say on authority that he has been sacked, but then this is a kind of positive reaction that, okay, there is this problem with this person, and it's problem for investors. So, and since we need these investors, we have to react such that these investors feel that their investment are secure.
Yes.
So I can tell you authority that now Dangote is feeling a little bit relieved, because the person frustrating his effort and frustrating his investment is no longer in the system.
Yes.
So this is what foreign investors would like to see. If there is issues of correction, how do investors react? Dangote submitted a report to the ICPC, and ICPC came out and duly acknowledged the report, mentioning that they are going to pursue this with force. Right? So these are some of the things investors want to see. So most of the things investors want to see is that you guys are serious. You guys want to do business, and how you guys react as a country to issues that are frustrating investors' effort. Right. So for instance, if you have issues that has to do with macroeconomic stability, investors will want to see how does the government respond. So take a look, for instance, the issue of inflation that has been within the country.
Yes.
So if inflation has taken a turn, now it has been on a steady decline over the past few months.
Yes.
So these are some of the signals that investors are looking at outside the normal structure of the economy. They want to see, okay, if there are problems, how do you guys react to these problems? And not just react, how fast do you react? Because sometimes delay in the actions of the country or of the presidency tells a lot about how serious they are as far as the business is concerned. So I can say that the presidency and the government are really kind of trying in changing the narrative, especially around reacting to some of these issues that are, inhibiting against the foreign direct investment or the businesses, the local businesses in the country. So this is what they need to do more in the future in order to ensure that foreign direct investors are confident in investing in the economy.
Well, in recent months, we've seen Mr. President have some top people in some top organizations, those individuals resigning, and now we wouldn't even know if they all resigned willingly or it just happened diplomatically, so as there wouldn't be rift and more chaos within the system. And we'll see how all of this pan out. But Bello, you would stay with us. We'll be going on a very quick break, and then when we return back, this conversation continues. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Discuss, and we've been having an interesting conversation with my dear friend Bello Mohammed on foreign investment, addressing policy strategies and for capital inflow, which we have highlighted a whole lot of concerns and also responses from the presidency on how to address on how the presidency has addressed this issue and giving, investors more confidence. A major one that needs to be addressed more and swiftly is the issue around insecurity, because it has been around for over a decade now, and that has also contributed negatively. So, Bello, let's look at this other angle. Which government action would you think the government needs to unlock quickly, so as private sector investment can come in faster? We can't talk about the nation's economy being stable, having foreign direct investment, and not also looking at the sector of the private, looking at the private sector. So, which sector? What do you think the government needs to unlock quickly, so as the private sector investment can be rolling in faster? Because we all know that the job alone is not for the governments. They need partnership from private investors and private sectors here in Nigeria, so as to see infrastructural development, which will also attract foreign direct investment. So, from your point, what do you think the government needs to unlock quick?
Yeah, so what I really think the government need to do better, if they really want this foreign direct investment and even local investment to spread out, is we really bring down the cost of doing business.
Yes.
I mentioned earlier our challenges. We have been having this problem for over decades, right? We have been having issues with the national grid.
Yes.
In 2025 only, I can't count the number of times that the national grid has fallen. And this is problem that persists and, continuously, right? So, cannot attract foreign investors with these issues and bottleneck. Because these issues significantly, continuously reduce the return on investment.
Yes.
And other than reducing the return on investment, it increases the cost of business such that it almost appears as if it is no longer profitable to run any business, because you cannot be running on deficit. Business is profit oriented. So if you are setting up a business or you are investing in a country, your main aim is how to contribute and then how to make profit out of your contribution.
Yes.
So we have to address this issue, especially this electricity issue. Without addressing the issue, the country will continue to struggle to attract, this foreign direct investment, and even, the majority of the local investment will even go into extinction, because even the most optimistic investor will hesitate if the operating costs are too high.
Yes.
So the government has to step in, has to look at this issue, and has to pursue it with full seriousness. We have to make this a high priority, because this is one of the most determining factors for investment outside the macroeconomic indicators.
Okay.
We really have to address this issue.
Yes. Looking at it now, looking at Nigerian economy and the GDP at where it stands now. Earlier this year, the president made comments of having Nigerian naira stable between 1,500 naira, and then we've seen that stability within that sector, within the FX sector of the naira being stable at around 1,500 naira. And he also made a bold claim and also an ambitious statement, saying that he's looking forward to Nigerian GDP being raised to around 1 trillion naira by 2030. So looking at it now from this angle and looking at what our foreign direct investment is looking at this point now, trying to weigh the two, do you think it's feasible that come 2030, like you mentioned earlier, if you remember, that investors look futuristically of what a country's economy is looking like and how stable things are being done. And you've highlighted key issues around power sector and also the cost of doing business. If we have all of these challenges now, 2030 is just around the corner. Do you think that Nigeria can be able to have that GDP of around 1 trillion within this time frame that we have?
Well, I would say that the president is being a little bit, over ambitious, because, we have to really state this fact. 1 trillion economy, growing the economy into a 1 trillion economy is something that is very feasible. But given the current timeline and the current issues and challenges that we are still struggling with, this is not something that is really feasible.
Okay.
Because this will take us to still my earlier conversation that investors are forward looking, right? And but for politicians, they just want to sometimes say something that would look, really attractive to the masses.
Yeah.
You can't be talking of 1 billion economy when you are still struggling with electricity, when you are still battling with grid collapse. So we can never, I won't say we can never within this shortest period of time achieve this 1 trillion economy. If we need to achieve this, we have to address this issue. We have to have stable and constant electricity supply, which is key in attracting all this foreign direct investment and even encouraging domestic production.
Yes.
So which this issue that I'm pressing on, if you look at it, it has a link to almost all the factors.
Yeah.
For instance, this cost of running business that I've been emphasizing on.
Yes.
It is the main driver of this cost of business most of the time is this energy cost. So a lot of these businesses and industry are struggling with this energy cost, and it contributes to the largest to their cost of doing business. So if we really want this $1 trillion economy, we know what the problems are and we must address them. Otherwise, we might just be casting, pearls on the air. So I really think that we need to address this if we really need the $1 trillion economy with this short period of time.
Come January 2026, the full taxation will be implemented into the Nigerian system. And then for personal income earners and those that earn less than ₦1 million annually wouldn't be paying tax. And then the tax bracket or the taxation will be more on organizations doing, large numbers. So looking at that now, do you think this can help in a way to achieve that milestone by Mr. President, or do you think he's also going to still scare investors for that? Because we know other nations, Germany and other developed countries and countries that are still developing, were able to restructure after World War II and be able to, capitalize and create a very good tax system that took the economy to the level which it is now. So with this now initiative by the presidency and his cabinet in terms of economy, do you think we can be able to achieve this feat?
Yeah. So I think the aim of all the tax reform, the implementation beginning, January, is all targeted toward achieving the $1 trillion economy. So, but then the issue is that we cannot tax our way to success.
Okay.
Tax only is not really what is going to give us what we need. So even though tax will put, but then the most important thing is to have, this investment. We have this opportunity to attract this foreign direct investment. We have the opportunity to grow our local industry. We have the opportunity to encourage others to go into businesses. I think these are what we should be focusing on rather than the taxing, because people, myself and a lot of other people have mentioned that Nigeria as a country, we don't really have a revenue problem.
Okay.
So of tax, we are still looking at ways to, raise revenue, right? That's not revenue. So, but then we don't have that problem as a country. Nigeria has never had this issue of revenue generation problems. Majority of our problem is spending problem. We have the money, and most of the time we don't really know what to prioritize or how to spend this money. So take for it recently during the federal executive, right? Yeah. So there was this expenditure that was approved, and I felt it was not necessary. So the fact of the construction of, the bank of a new building for the Bank of Industry, right? So if you look at this issue, Bank of Industry have an office in Lagos, and their newly built twin towers in Abuja was just recently commissioned.
Yes.
Just before President Buhari, pass on the mantle of leadership to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
True.
So these are some of the problem we have. Spending on things that are not really priority, that are not really important. Most of the offices, most of the floors at Abuja on that building are not really occupied. There are reports that most of the floors are empty. Right? So what sense? How can we continue this way? So we have to rethink our priority. What should be our priority? There are institutions and sector that we should prioritize that will really contribute significantly towards us achieving this target of the $1 trillion dollar economy.
Yeah.
So these are the things I think we should prioritize. We have to prioritize what our spending are, not focusing on taxing, because we don't have a revenue problem.
Okay, so implementation problem is basically what we have now. So give us in your own words, finally, if you are to advise the president now, what would you tell him to focus more on that would help him achieve his goal of reaching a 1 trillion economy, GDP by 2030, and what can be done swiftly and organizations that he needs to partner with quickly so as to see that all of these ambitious goals are being achieved within the time frame despite the current realities that the economy is facing?
So the structural issues, I would say, if I'm to advise the president, I would say the structural issues the economy and the country is facing, these are things that we need to prioritize. These are things that we need to address because we alone, through taxation, we cannot drive our way through the goal of $1 trillion economy. So we need foreign direct investors. We need local businesses to expand. So and we cannot encourage them to expand. We cannot encourage foreign direct investors to come without addressing structural issues. So and we have to be clear as possible with our policy. And there has to be this certainty in the economy. We have to ensure that to some extent policies are stable, the macro economy is stable, our policies are clear as possible, and these policy fluctuations are not anywhere around businesses or foreign direct investors. Right? So we have to make it clear to investors, businesses that these things are going to be stable for at least 10 to 15 years, and this is to enable every investor, every businesses to plan, right? Because if you are planning as a business or as an investor, you are not planning short term, you are planning long term. The list is 5 years. So we have to ensure that these people have this confidence that things are going to be stable over the 5-10 years, and this is what is really going to attract them to invest in the country, and this is how we are going to grow our way to the $1 trillion economy.
Yes. All right. Bello, thank you so much for taking our time to join us on today's edition of Discourse, and thank you for all of your input and in-depth analysis that you have given us today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, you may wonder why we had this conversation, why foreign direct investment matters. It helps in creating jobs, technology transfer, export capacity, long-term fiscal benefits as well. But why do you think, or you may wonder why investors are then just watching, not coming? Primary reasons are mostly around policy inconsistency, like that was mentioned by Bello, FX and repatriation risk, security, weak infrastructure, and most times tax regulation treatment. Despite a strong balance of payment position and improved reserve in 2024, the foreign direct investment fell, and a sign that portfolio and remittance flow can still bounce back faster than long-term project capital. Opportunities for Nigeria is still there, and we are hoping to see that the government would look into all of these angles and pay more critical attention to the sectors that can be able to attract more of these foreign investors, and also solve the problem within regulatory bodies and security concerns as well, to see to the fact that the economy and the nation is actually safe and can cohabit with the foreign investors when they are done watching and deciding to come invest in Nigerian economy. This is how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Discuss. My name is Samuel Odi. I'll see you again as we discuss further. Bye for now.